This is London's financial centre, the City of London, at 1 p.m. Around 500,000 people work here. Well, not anymore. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our relationship with the office, perhaps forever. Millions of white-collar workers have seen they don't have to be married to a regimented commute to work at your desk by 9 system. Instead, they've found they can have a more open relationship with the office. But the effects of that change are significant. Streets like this, which at rush hour you could barely squeeze down, are now quiet. And inside these towers, it's the same situation. Although after the pandemic things will get busier, it's not clear they will return to the way they were. Survey after survey shows workers want flexibility, but more surprisingly, managers and bosses are listening and many are joining the push for flexible work. So, are these changes here to stay? And if they are, what does that mean for the office and those of us who work in them? During the COVID lockdown, there's been a schism between those who've realised, wait, I need the office, like me, and those who are happy to spend less time there, like my co-producer Tom.
When I take a coffee break, I get to see my 3-year-old, and that is great. I've enjoyed that a lot. I'm also kind of fortunate. I have a good microphone here. I have a camera from work. I can, move it around and hide my mess in time to do an interview. Like it has worked pretty well for me to do my job and do it in this sort of isolated workstation that I've created.
I live in a shared flat where it's hard to be productive, and given the choice between an office with a desk and free coffee and all the rest, it's a simple choice. I like being in the office.
It just has to be different for different people, right? Different people have different struggles, and different people, find an office as a solution or find the office as a part of that struggle.
The COVID pandemic has forced a radical experiment on us, and the results of that experiment are coming in. Companies now know if employees can work remotely. They know if teams are still being productive, and workers have gotten a taste for flexibility, and they like it.
Before, the paradigm in the office world was I'm going to the office 9 to 5, and if not, I have to explain why, or I'm doing something unusual. Now I know that I can stay home 1 or 2 days a week, or that I could come at different hours, and that impacts overall demand.
Dror Poleg is an author and property advisor to some of the world's biggest companies. He argues things aren't going back to the way they were. Deal with it.
I think at some point things change fundamentally. There's a difference between employees being away or offices being empty for 2 or 3 months, and between offices being empty for a year or 15 months. Like you just don't go back to the same place after such a length of period.
Dror argues workers have adjusted. They've got new routines and habits. So what will become the new normal? Surveys show workers are splitting their time between the office and home and want to keep it that way. Management like the idea too. A UK survey of over 2,000 office workers found most do not intend to spend 5 days a week in the workplace, even when the pandemic is over, with both bosses and employees seeing home working as a long-term trend. A survey by business consultancy McKinsey of 800 global executives found 15% will allow staff to work remotely 2 or more days a week. In the finance sector, the Netherlands' biggest bank predicts that staff will be working about half their time from home once the pandemic is over. And in Italy, UniCredit plans to have 40% of work done remotely after the crisis. It's important to say this shift is not being seen across the economy. In the US, more than 60% of workers cannot work remotely. Their jobs require at least some physical presence. But for millions of white-collar workers, the scale and speed of this change should not be underestimated.
In a prime market like New York or London or San Francisco or even Shanghai or Hong Kong, a company spends between $12,000 to $20,000 a year on putting an employee in a seat in an office. Now, one of the most interesting questions that I think companies will ask themselves now is not, okay, can I save money by, telling everyone to go home? But they can ask themselves, if I take $15,000 and spend it differently, can I make my employee more productive? Can I make my employee happier? Can I maybe attract better people than I currently have? And I think in many cases, the answer to that question will be yes.
Dror believes we are living through nothing short of a revolution in the way we use offices. And there are going to be winners and losers.
To destabilize office and to cause a revolution, you only need 10 or 15% of demand to shift. And I think that's what's happening.
Jack, there's been recent survey data that you've got hold of about occupancy rates around here. What are they like? Are these buildings practically empty?
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly more than half empty.
Jack Sidders is Bloomberg's European commercial property reporter, and he's been told privately what commercial real estate agencies won't say publicly.
If you were speaking to them off the record, then you detect a much more significant amount of concern. And you see it with some of the public statements. You've seen real estate leaders come out and say publicly, look, we need to get people back. Come on, politicians, you need to sort this out.
So those of you who are feeling very comfortable never coming back into the office, well, bad news. Experts agree that for most of us, we will still have a relationship with the office, just not as demanding. But even if workers return 4 out of 5 work days, that's still a huge reduction, and it's got investors' attention.
What you see if you look at the share prices of the big office landlords is that they're down substantially this year. Much of the big London office landlords are down 30, 40, 50% this year. But the valuation of their assets has barely changed. It's likely that both of those numbers are wrong, and it'll be somewhere in between.
With growing consensus that office workers will be splitting their time between the office and perhaps their home, flexible workspaces find themselves well positioned to take advantage. Tanya Adir is the co-founder and CEO of Uncommon, a London-based flexible working company founded in 2015. She agrees things aren't going back to the way they were, but sees a bright future for the office.
It's very difficult to run a team if people are completely in different locations. Yes, you can work from home, you can work from a coffee shop one day a week, but at the same time to really have that connection between individuals where I think ideas come to life, you do want to be present in physical space together.
Tanya is betting offices will shift from being primarily places where you go to get work done to places where you go to collaborate and build teams.
You don't necessarily need to go to the office. You don't need to waste the time of commuting. The reasons for that office to exist are fundamentally to come and meet your colleagues, collaborate, be able to come together and work on the presentation, on a new idea, to exchange sort of energies fundamentally with each other.
This trend of making offices places for collaboration has been going on for years, but the COVID pandemic has shifted the dial. The argument's not around will work be more flexible, it's about how flexible it will be.
The office of the future is not a place. The office of the future is a network that allows me to enable my employees to access whatever it is that they need to access right now in order to produce their best possible work. And of course, to be happy and to keep coming back and to give their talents to my business and not to anyone else.
Tanya agrees that satellite offices will become more common, but argues for most of us, the office will still play a major role.
Naturally, when everything normalizes, people would want to still have their headquarters, their culture, their identity to be able to connect. And I think there is a very loud voice out there saying we're all very productive from home, but I think there is a silent majority that are not that productive at home, and they just they're not being necessarily heard because your kids are around, your pet is disturbing you, your neighbor is doing decoration, renovation, and making noise.
After a year of working from home, the gloss may have come off and many of us will start to miss the office. But will anyone, bosses or workers, really want to go back to the old ways? Offices aren't going to stay like this, a ghost town. But instead of cramming us in, the new office may well be spacier, with more room to collaborate. And most importantly, we will come in when we need to, not because we have to.